What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another draft video. Today, we are going to be beginning our series as we go through every Detroit Lions draft pick for the 2022 NFL Draft and give that player a grade. We're also going to do this with undrafted free agents as well. And today, we're going to start from the back and work our way up. We're going to talk about the Lions' last pick in the 2022 NFL Draft with pick number 237. Let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take two more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Detroit Lions select.
Welcome, everybody, to our video. Glad you guys are here. And we're back to discuss the Detroit Lions draft, and we're going to be diving into these players. Specifically, we're going to be giving out grades. I love doing this because there's a lot of players that I may know a little bit about. I may know a little bit on the surface. There's guys like James Houston that I don't know very much, at all about, so I'm excited to dive into that. And there's also players that I feel like I have pretty good knowledge on. Of course, a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, but to go back, really dive into the small things and just rewatch this player, because it's been a little bit since I've watched Hutchinson, a few weeks. So to get back into that's going to be awesome. But to know that these guys are Lions. And when you start from the back, especially 7th round picks, there's definitely no lock whatsoever that these guys actually end up making the team. Rookie minicamp is going to be taking place May 14th through May 16th. So you're going to have guys coming in for tryouts. We talked about a few of those players yesterday. If you guys want to go check out that video, we broke down the quarterback that we're bringing in for that. When you're pick number 237, there's definitely no guarantee. You look at the position that this player is coming into. We do have a lot of names here, and he may be pushing for that final spot at this positional group. That is cornerback Chase Lucas out of Arizona State. All right, now the Detroit Lions currently, they have some names at the cornerback position, but it looks like they may have about, I wouldn't call them locks, but 6 players that you feel pretty good about that will make the team this next season. It was Jeff Okudah, Amani Oruwariye, Ife Melifonwu, Jerry Jacobs, AJ Parker, Mike Hughes. Those 6 guys you feel good about that will make the team, but we don't know for sure. I mean, a guy like AJ Parker, we liked him last season. He didn't play extremely well. He didn't play the entire season either, but he was our slot last year. He won that role from some veterans, so he's a guy that might be in play here for some competition. Also, Mike Hughes, who was signed this offseason to a 1-year deal. He has a $2.25 million cap number, but only $425K of that is guaranteed. So he's not a lock to make the team. I guess you could argue none of these guys are locks to make the team, but it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for sure for Chase Lucas. Maybe the Lions end up keeping 7 cornerbacks. Maybe he takes one of these guys' spots. I knew just a very little about. I knew very little. I actually knew more about his teammate that was drafted ahead of him, I believe, to the New England Patriots, Jack Jones, the other cornerback out of Arizona State. I knew more about that player than I did about Chase Lucas, but I had a little bit of a sense that maybe schematically the Lions would be interested in that. I did our predictive mock draft. I had us taking Jack Jones in the 7th round. He went way before that to New England, but obviously they came back and took his teammate, so maybe it was kind of that style that the Lions liked, and they got Chase Lucas in the 7th round, which was acquired via a trade. The Lions traded back from pick 181 to 188, and in that they acquired pick number 237, so this was a pick that they didn't originally come into the draft with, and there was only like 24, 25 picks after this one before the draft was over, and we'll talk about that at the end where the value was. So let's start with his athletic numbers. Let's start with his build. This is a 5'11.5" cornerback weighing 188 pounds. He put up a 39-inch vertical and a 10-8 broad jump. Okay, this is the area that he stuck out first, is the explosiveness. Having a 39-inch vertical and a 10-8 broad jump, that's pretty darn incredible. He also ran a 4.48 40, which is good, definitely adequate to playing both inside and outside. It's not elite, it's probably not great, but it's definitely good. Okay, it's not a concern with the 40 time. He had a 1.52 10-yard split, which is kind of that takeoff. That's also a great time. His 3-cone drill came in at a 6.78, which is also great. Now, where he didn't test out as well was kind of the strength side, putting up 12 bench press reps. When you watch him, he is a little bit leaner and thinner, but at the same time, it's not something that's very concerning. It's not like he's weighing 165. He definitely has enough mass, and you see by the competitive play style that he brings, this is a player that definitely could play both inside and outside, just like he did in college. But 12 bench press reps, not outstanding by any means. It's lower even for the cornerback position. Just to throw it out there, just to kind of impress you a little bit with a guy like, I don't know, Aiden Hutchinson, our first pick in the draft. His 3-cone drill, which it really tested his, kind of that agility, the ability to get down, things like that. His 3-cone drill was actually a little bit better than Chase Lucas timed out at. So I just want to throw that out there. No, it has nothing to do with Chase Lucas. And that doesn't mean Chase Lucas was bad. His was actually pretty great. But that just shows how elite Aiden Hutchinson's was, especially for a guy at his size. I mean, like we said, it was the best since 2003 for a guy at his height. So that was pretty incredible. Have to throw that in there just to give some love. But now I want to talk a little bit about Chase Lucas. Let's take a look at his production, because he has had some pretty good production, but he's also played for Arizona State for a very long time. And it does show up on his film. All right, he's a very intelligent, high IQ player. This is a guy that since 2017, because he's been a 5-year player, he started in 49 games, which I believe I heard is the second most in Arizona State history. Since 2017, he's had 32 forced incompletion, which is first in the Pac-12, so that's pretty impressive. He also has 6 career interceptions. The concern with that is that he hasn't had an interception since 2019, but keep in mind 2020 was a short season. I had like 4 games in there, and 2021, yes, did not tally an interception. So it seems concerning, but it's not a huge concern when you see the way that he plays. This past year, he notched 34 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 6 passes defended according to Pro Football Reference. But on his career, you see 223 total tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 6 interceptions, and 28 passes defended, or according to PFF, 32 forced incompletions and 2 forced fumbles. By the way, one of those came against USC in 2020, and we'll get to that. Let's dive right into this. We'll show some clips as we go. We're going to start with this run defense, then we'll get to the pass coverage where we'll spend most of our time. But I do want to start off with the run defense, because a lot of times you can get a sense of a guy's competitiveness here, which is what he brought up in his introductory presser, is he feels like he's a very competitive player, and it shows up very quickly when you watch his games. And I watched a couple from different seasons, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I think 2019 I watched Oregon, 2020 was USC, and 2021 multiple games from this past year. But you look at his run defense first, and everybody will say, well, the guy's, he's a willing participant against the run. And that is very true. He is active, taking on blockers, trying to work towards the ball carrier, but he's not a guy that's usually shedding. He's more of a guy that just tries to get around. But in some of these small quarters, short area situations as a run defender, you'll see him go low. You'll see him almost kind of try to upend the ball carrier, go a little bit for those kneecaps, if you will. That's how he kind of works as the tackler. Definitely a little bit more aggressive willingness to kind of just throw himself at whoever that is. You'll get the occasional missed tackle here, but he's actually seemingly a more reliable tackler than I anticipated when I first got into it. I was like, oh, he's going to miss a lot of tackles. Doesn't seem to miss a lot of tackles, but I don't want you to think the guy is a thumper either. He's more of like a drag, wrap-up tackler that goes very low, but you do see a little bit more willingness, especially in some of those short yard situations, or if it's like saving a touchdown. There was this one on the sideline. He's running it down on the sideline off an angle, and he just kind of lays himself out to knock the receiver out of bounds short of the end zone. Then when it comes to open field tackling, again, we talked about it. There is some wrap up that you see. He usually sometimes goes a little bit higher here, but he's not a bad tackler. He's more reliable than I expected he would be. But again, not a big hitter. He becomes more wrap up in the open field, more breakdown. He is susceptible to give up more yards than sometimes maybe you would hope. Backpedaling, just making sure that he makes a tackle as the last line of defense. But I think you can trust him in the open field. If a play gets out there, that usually he's going to bring the guy down. Will he give up a few extra yards? Probably. Will he, light the guy up? Probably not. But he'll probably at least bring the ball carrier down, which is huge. But when you talk about the competitiveness in a player, I mean, that can just be thrown out all the time. But with this player, it shows up on the film. Now, there was a game against Washington State this past season. You saw it in the USC game in 2020. Very competitive, chippy player. You saw Washington State. He was getting into it with the receiver. All right, they were battling after the play. People were sending the George Pickens videos. That's what he was doing with the receiver, not to that extent. But they were battling. You saw it against USC. He's the kind of guy that just he talks a little bit after the play is over. That's just who he is. And, he said that he's that kind of player, and you could see it on film. But the one play that stuck out to me, and I got to believe that one of the early games the Lions watched, or maybe they got some insight from St. Brown or something, was the 2020 game against USC, because obviously Drake London was there, but so was St. Brown. And even though he didn't match up with those guys very often, there was a play in that game that I really loved. You saw the aggression to come down, try to make a play. Again, doesn't really shed blockers extremely well, so he gets sort of blocked out of the play initially, but then you see him get back into the play from behind, chop the ball out, force a fumble, and it's that kind of competitiveness that he plays plays with. And it shows up all over the film in many different ways, but definitely starts as a run defender. So I would say he's a fairly reliable, low wrap-up tackler, understanding he can't go high often, but he's definitely not a thumper, so don't get that twisted. He has a few forced fumbles on his resume. He's a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of coverage, where he does certain things really well, and I think some things show up in just the amount of experience that he's had. 49 starts is a lot of starts. I believe I heard that was the second most in Arizona State history, which would make a lot of sense. 49 starts. He's played a lot of football, and he said in 2020 he started to get moved more to the nickel position because he had the shortened year, and they just want guys that are flexible, that can play inside outside. So you start to see that transition, and it wasn't the prettiest always. There was a game against UCLA where he had some problems against Kyle Phillips. He kind of went to work on him a few times, but you do see the flexibility to play both positions, and we've seen good reps from both positions, even though he still seems more comfortable to me on the outside as of now. The coverage, and there's a couple things that stick out. First off, when you talk about that kind of experience, you want to see a guy that's pretty instinctual. You want to see some route anticipation, and all of those things, they check the box, and they check the box pretty darn quickly. Now, does this get him in trouble at times? Yes, you will see him overcommit. He can kind of lose that step, but this is a pretty instinctual, good route recognition type of cornerback. Let's start on the outside where you see that route recognition, and I mean, you see this without, hey, okay, the cornerback, the wide receiver turned his eyes to the quarterback, so I'm going to jump on the route now. You do that, you're usually too late, or they're selling a double move. However, he jumps on this based on the break that he's seeing. This is an area to me where it gives me a lot of confidence in his ability to play off man coverage, which is a really tough coverage to play, having an eye on where the quarterback is looking, what he's seeing, but at the same time playing off man coverage, not getting up and just, trying to stick and run with the guy athletically, but kind of see everything that's going on at the same time. See the route recognition that he plays with, and it shows up in plenty of different ways. There are multiple occasions of him jumping on underneath passes, anticipating a cut underneath and making a play on the football. Now, he does get susceptible here to getting beat, specifically if a double move is played off really well, because he'll take that extra step, and it specifically, I think, showed up from the slot position. Here you're playing usually tighter man coverage, and for him, he was susceptible to overcommitting, specifically zig routes for giving him problems, where you take like usually a few steps towards the middle of the field and you kind of stop and work your way back out into the flats. Zig routes would give him problems because he overcommits sometimes to that underneath route, trying to make a play, jump the route, undercut it, whatever that may be, but then they stop and they work back. Then he was beat multiple times on zig routes, things like that. We talk about Kyle Phillips from the slot position. He gave him some problems. Now, he ran some routes really, really well against him, okay? That's for sure. You got to play like this against Kyle, where it looks like he's selling maybe a wheel or a fade route, and then he just turns on the brakes. You see him open his hips a little bit. You see him get a little bit high. So see the assignment understanding and how a team is trying to attack him. Start to squeeze off routes from the outside cornerback position. This is where I thought Jerry Jacobs stood out very early. Very early watching Jerry Jacobs, you saw the recognition to start to squeeze off routes when playing the outside cornerback position. He started to squeeze them off as they worked towards the middle of the field into the help. There was a cornerback at the Senior Bowl that had a rep like this, but you see him here on the inside. He's playing some tighter coverage here. He's going to take the underneath receiver on the stack, and you're going to see he has the help towards the inside with the linebackers on the zone. So he kind of walls off this outside route and basically shuts it down, just gets his body in the way of this route. You put him on the outside, he has inside help. He'll start to get to the outside hip and really squeeze that route back inside, really close that distance, force it back to his help on the inside. You also see the recognition of where he's at, the route awareness, the awareness of where he's at on the field and what a team may be looking to set up, whether that's a stack situation. Are they trying to set up a rub route? You get some tight man coverage, teams can throw rub routes at you, right? They can have you kind of run into each other and try to create this, opening, almost like a pick play. For him, you see the recognition right off the snap of if it's a stack, if it's a trips formation. Get out of the way, let me avoid, kind of that contact, and then I'll get connected with my receiver. Even if I don't initially line up straight across from them, I understand what they're trying to set up here. So once they snap it, I'll get to position, get my way out of a possible rub situation where I'm knocked out of the play and get myself back into the play. I didn't see reps where, guys could just run double crossers and have him run into his teammate and he's taken out of the play. It's that kind of route awareness, I think, definitely comes with experience and time, but the feel that he has, it's gonna make him a valuable option, specifically for zone coverage, but also for man coverage, off man coverage. Really, I think he could play in any sort of schematic way you want him to, whether that's cover 3, whether that's hanging down underneath in a possible cover 2 zone, whether that's playing tight man coverage because you do see some agility there, or if that's playing off-man coverage, where I love the upside in off-man coverage. You see that kind of closing burst. We talked about the 10-yard split, and you see it when he anticipates and jumps on a route specifically from the outside, that route anticipation that he has, ooh, he can make some beautiful plays. Can overcommit a little bit. Now, I will say this. To his defense, he does have some nice flexibility, some recovery flexibility, all right? There was this route against USC where early in the rep, he loses the route, jumps inside on the receiver cuts back outside, and you're thinking, okay, he's going to be flipped around, turned around, he's going to lose this route. And you see the flexibility to immediately flip his entire body and get right back into phase with the receiver. So you see some of that flexibility. Now, where he lacks some of that recovery burst, all right? The 10-yard split is there. He doesn't have the elite long speed where sometimes even on pure just vertical routes from tight man coverage, he can either get even or possibly lose a half a step. And then at that point in the NFL, that's all you need sometimes to win over top, right? And that can keep him just out of range of making a play on the football. There's an area where in tight man coverage, maybe you could see him show a little more physicality off the line to try to redirect to really slow down routes, because we've seen occasions of him stabbing at the line of scrimmage. It's something that he talked about that he's improved upon with the coaching staff. You have Herm Edwards, a former cornerback, as their head coach. You have a Marvin Lewis, one of the best DCs in NFL history, was there as an assistant, a special assistant to the head coach. So you've seen the reps of the stab off the line of scrimmage while keeping his balance. That recovery burst doesn't necessarily show up where if he's a step behind to kind of just accelerate back into phase and get himself in a position to make a play, he has good flexibility, good agility to redirect and get back in position, but you don't see that recovery burst when a receiver is running at his top speed and he's trying to recover into that. You don't see it. And then you don't see that elite long speed either, so that's why I feel like suited well for off-man coverage, which was, if you remember, when Brad Holmes drafted Iffy last season, one thing that he brought up that presser was like, look, Iffy, one thing we like about him at his size, you're thinking, oh, he's pressed, he's physical, he's all these things. But we like the fact that he's that, but he can play off-man coverage, because for a guy at his size, you would just expect he's going to be dominant at the line of scrimmage. He can play off-man coverage. This is where I think he could be very, very entertaining, is playing off-man coverage, reading routes from the outside, jumping on routes, making plays on the football, showing kind of that, burst downhill, jumping on routes, and then it's about the ball skills. And here's another area where he's pretty darn impressive. He's not the tallest guy, so there's certain situations where he can be a little bit limited here, especially if he's like a half a step behind. He can be limited on certain reps. However, when you talk about just specifically ball skills, whether that's undercutting routes, playing through a receiver's body, he's pretty outstanding. And you see it by his statistics with the passes defended, with the forced incompletions, but he's pretty outstanding here, working through the body, playing very physical at the catch point and just jarring the ball loose. You see the 6 interceptions, and I think he's much more impactful in terms of ball production. He will be from the outside, from off-man coverage, where he can kind of see both man, where he has to stick with man, but still kind of have an idea of where the quarterback is looking. Tie that all together with his route anticipation, I think there's legit ball production that could happen on the outside. And that's one thing with his teammate, Jack Jones from Arizona State, that stuck out to me very quickly. Like we said with the route awareness, you talk about squeezing routes towards the inside. He does have that feel for not only his responsibility, but where his help is, right? Do I need to squeeze this to the sideline or really start slowly kind of sliding this route out of bounds? Like, where is my help? Where do I need to be? Things like that, where in off-man coverage, and you expect this in zone coverage, right? He's got his eyes on the quarterback. He's just reading the quarterback. He's playing a zone. So if the quarterback's staring down the middle of the field, he's going to start dropping that direction. That's cool, but it's not impressive, right? That's not something that sticks out. What sticks out to me is he can do this from off-man coverage, where you're playing off, you're giving that cushion off the line, you're still assigned to this man, but at the same time, you have the route recognition and the feel for, okay, hey, I'm on the outside, the slot's running a vertical route, my outside receiver's running a hitch or a curl route 8 yards down the field. I'm playing off-man coverage, so I feel that I'm watching him, and as he sits down and I see this slot run by and the ball has not come out yet, I understand, hey, they're getting over top here. We've seen him completely release, and he doesn't get burned on this, leave his route and go back and get into help where no one else is. If you're in a cover 3 situation, understand, where are we vulnerable? Where are we susceptible to getting beat? There was one where they ran a wheel route to his side. They tried to get his, outside man to run like a deep end to try to pull him out of that play and have him continue to follow it. And as he follows it, he recognizes he's going inside at the sideline responsibility, so he drops that route, works his way back to the outside. Just a little bit slow, but was nearly there to make a play where it's not wide open and he's running free. Maybe like a simplified feel of it, you have Chase Lucas here playing cornerback on the right side. So when you draw, this kind of deep in route, right, that's going to pull Chase Lucas, the design, inside. So that's going to take him out of that zone, which means that you have this kind of wheel route coming underneath that's going to work its way into the zone, which he just vacated. However, Lucas has the recognition to let that route go, pass that route off, get back to the sideline. He's just a step late here, but pass that off, not be completely out of zone here, and force this pass towards the sideline, get back towards the direction of this pass, just let his route go over the middle, and there he is. You can see a lot of route breakdowns there, but you can just see the intelligence and the feel for that position. When it comes to the slot position, I think this is an area where you definitely see ability. Like, you see the ability to possibly put him in the slot in certain matchups and let him help you there, where, you saw times last year with a guy like AJ Parker, right? AJ Parker, you didn't want to put him on the outside, and we know how important it is to have that flexibility. So you have a guy like Mike Hughes who's played inside outside. We'll see what they feel like is the best for him. This feels like a guy that, again, will kind of compete for a similar type of role, but he also I think he does better against bigger receivers than Mike Hughes. Like, Mike Hughes seems like a complete liability against bigger receivers. Doesn't seem to be the case as much with this guy because he just has that knack for making a play on the football, but we know they like Mike Hughes coming out. So, I do draw some similarities there. Slot position, while I think he can be serviceable and he can be useful here because you do see kind of the instincts of what's coming to avoid some of these, pick plays, these rubs underneath. Usually, though, again, he could be susceptible to some of these double moves underneath. He'll overcommit a little bit to the first thing that he thinks is coming because you're underneath, you're expecting quick hitters, where he'll overcommit to that first one, then he's got to recover back. And it's not like he can't, it's not like he doesn't have the flexibility to recover back. If you're in the slot position, all it takes is that one little jab. All it takes is that one little overcommit. All it takes is that little half step where they get you out of your spot and you're beat, right? Because it's such a short area the quarterback has to throw to. You got so many of these smaller, quicker, speedy guys where if they get you to jab, take one, false step, you're out of place and the ball is going to be completed. But on the outside, you leave a little bit more room for flexibility where it's okay, I maybe have overcommitted a little bit here, but I can actually recover because there is flexibility to recover. There isn't that, great recovering burst I noticed, but there is flexibility to recover. And I think on the outside, it really can hide that a little bit more than it can on the slot position. Maybe just playing him in tight man from the slot is best for him. I also like him as a zone player a lot as well for all the reasons we just mentioned. He does show, pretty long arms for his size, but to kind of get the feel of the zone, where my responsibility is, the anticipation to see a route break. I think zone and off man on the outside is exciting for him. He's a very low mover. You see the flexibility in the hips where he's not like, trying to move his body, but his feet won't match. Very quick feet off the line of scrimmage. It's very low to the ground, gets a lot of sink, coming out of the back pedal. And his back pedal is very smooth. It's very fluid. And you notice he doesn't have to rely on connection. He doesn't have to rely on, hey, I got to get physical with you off the line to try to slow you down until you get into kind of your route. No, he doesn't need that. There are many reps where he doesn't even touch the receiver, but yet he can play tight man coverage and just, kind of just stay in phase with his feet. He gets some false steps. He does overcommit a little bit. And you see the recovery flexibility in his lower body because he's low, he's agile. You just don't see sometimes that burst to get back into the play quick enough, and then the long end speed is not great either. So he can get beat over top. So there's certain situations where if you're having to play tight man coverage, you have to be very cautious of, okay, who is he matched up against, and do we have help over top? Because if not, he is susceptible to getting burnt deep. Not like by 4 yards. If he's not really usually either coming down on the route, attacking through your body, or even with you at the catch point, where he usually gets his head turned around. He doesn't panic at the catch point, but if he's not even in that situation, usually he doesn't always have the opportunity to actually make a play on the football unless it's brought into their body. Then he may have a shot. I want you to be perfect. I want you to only jump on routes that are going your direction, but you can't really do that, right? You have to, you're going to get both. And I think the Lions want those instinctual players that they're smart. They understand coverages. I can put him in off man. I can put him in tight coverage. He's not just a good athlete that just sticks in your pocket. He's physical at the catch point. He's willing as a run defender, but I can line him at different spots where if we are in a pinch and I need to throw him in the slot, I could probably throw him at slot. I have to protect him and make sure I give him some assignments that makes him comfortable, but I could throw him at slot. I can put him into any kind of zone coverage I feel like we need to. I can put him in off-man coverage, which is not easy to find, and that's why they were excited about Iffy. Struggle a little bit getting off blocks. He could struggle a little bit against more physical receivers on the edge outside if he stays at that size, and I'm sure he will because I think they like the flexibility. I don't think they want him 250 5 pounds because I think they like the flexibility between slot and outside unless someone starts to move in there. Maybe Jacobs gets more reps there this year and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, we can bulk you up a little bit more, add a little bit more to your frame and allow you to play on the outside. But I think because of the way that he plays now, you like the way that he is built because he has that flexibility. Can see rests where he'll give a little bit too much space, specifically playing on the outside where he'll give a little bit too much cushion. He needs to, and that can also lead to you being a little bit overcommittal because if you're giving so much cushion and then you think the route's going your way, now you're going to really jump on that. Then it becomes a double move and you're completely out of it. So you can see him give a little bit too much cushion, but I love the flexibility here. Man-off coverage is very exciting. I think the feel's very exciting. And this is a player where I think he can make some plays and he has flexibility. How high is his ceiling? I don't know. I mean, he may be close to hitting that. Some teams may believe he has already hit that. So there's potential there. You look at his age, look at his production. People may believe, yeah, he's hit his ceiling. And I think when you watch him, you see that competitiveness. Give him a 5.7 grade. Basically, I'm putting him in the category of, I think he's a good backup player and he's developmental. Like, I think there's things that you can develop here and he's already a smart player. So I think he's a nice sub-package guy. I think he's a nice developmental piece that maybe could at some point, someday become a starter. But right now, I think he's more of a backup type of player that is a little bit limited in some areas, inside and outside, but could be impactful for your team. And definitely doesn't look like a liability in any way. There are no red flags that I've noticed. But he is 25 years old. The age is going to come into that. The size is going to come into that. The long speed is always a question when you talk about these guys. So there's all of those things that will continue to be brought up. But I like the player. Chase Lucas is someone that you should check out. I think I threw enough clips in here where you're probably maybe got a good sense of him, but he is fun to watch. People may get caught up in the fact that, yeah, he's 25. You know, he hit his ceiling, things like that. You got to remember, he also came out of high school playing the running back position. So there could also be legitimately some upside here, as we've seen some good returns in terms of interceptions. There could be upside here as a potential kick returner. I mean, maybe because he has a running back background, you see good interception returns. There could be some possible kick returner potential here for the Detroit Lions, where you talk about the special team impact. You know, on special teams, he's going to hit. You know, he's going to be willing there. But a smart, instinctual player could end up being a late-round gem for the Detroit Lions, a player that could be impactful. You talk about A.J. Parker and Jerry. Both those guys, when drafted, this was a 7th-round pick. You know the Lions probably like something on film where they're like, hey, let's not let this guy become a UDFA. Like last year with Jermar Jefferson, they did the exact same thing. They didn't want to let that guy hit UDFA. We know about the defensive backs coaches that we have and how incredible Aubrey Pleasance and the Aaron Glenns are. This could end up being a really nice pick for the Lions that has a little bit more flexibility than we even think beyond outside, inside corner, possibly return flexibility. Now, Mike Hughes may end up being that guy because he's shown it in college, and that would make tons of sense to me. But I'm just throwing it out there, the flexibility options and, of course, special teams ability that he does have. I don't know every player that went after him after going through the list of names. There wasn't a lot of guys that stuck out to me. It was like, wow, we missed there. We should have taken this guy instead. If there was anybody like that, I would say I'd point to UDFA more than anything, where it's like, well, that guy went here. You could say, well, quarterback, you know, Skylar Thompson, Carson Strong. True, Carson Strong went UDFA, though, but Skylar Thompson did get drafted. Maybe you could say that. I'm not mad at it, though. And then I think you could also, I would say Rasheed Walker sticks out, the tackle that Green Bay picked up. I liked Rasheed Walker out of Penn State. I would have liked to grab a tackle there. But then we came back in UDFA and picked up Eze out of, I think that's how you say his name. Obinna Eze, I think that's how you say his name, out of TCU. And we're going to dive into his film soon. I'm excited to see that. You know, I love watching them tackles, them big dudes. I love it. But I'm not mad. When you see the names they went after, there's no one that sticks out. It's like, oh, we probably should have taken this guy instead. Quarterback is an interesting spot for a draft pick. Maybe it gives you a little sense on how they feel about, you know, a Bobby Price or those kind of things. You know, these guys actually have a legitimate future at the cornerback position for the Lions. But we know you can't have enough cornerbacks, just like you can't have enough pass rushers, just like you need receiver competition. There's some positions where it's just like you just need depth. And even Brad Holmes said that there was, you know, for defense, we were looking for depth. Starters too, but we were looking for some depth at some spots. And I think here you see that flexibility where, you know, if he's on your active roster, and it's like, man, you know, we only got one healthy slot. We're limited on the outside. You can play him at one position. Someone goes down, I can plug him in at the other spot. And while he may not be as, I think, dynamic at the slot right now, in certain positions you put him in, and he won't be a complete liability. But I do like him immediately as an outside guy more than I do at slot. And I think that's how the Lions will utilize him. We'll see about Mike Hughes. Mike Hughes is going to be an interesting one. Do they give him more reps at slot? We know AJ is your slot. So I think it's just the flexibility that's important. Not saying, hey, you're only a slot cornerback because because, you know, that's just not great. But you have flexibility to play inside, outside is how I would point out this player. But I do seem to like him a little bit more on the outside. Cornerback out of Arizona State is a Detroit Lion. I gave him a 5.6 grade. Definitely a player that I think could be a good backup, which means I think he may end up making the team. And I'd actually like to see him make the team. I'm very curious to see what words start to come out of training camp, and we see him at training camp, things like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we got some headlines like, hey, he picked off this guy, he made a play here, because he brings that competitiveness, and he seemed really juiced up when the Lions took him in that introductory press conference. So I like the pick. I do. It's an interesting position, but you're finding depth, and you can't have enough corners. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.